Welcome to the Property Experts Podcast, where you'll find open conversations, no bullshit attitudes, and deep dive insights from award-winning property developers and business owners, Ben Richards and Jack Jiggins. Together, they've delivered over 40 million in gross development value over the last 5 years and have a pipeline of over 25 million to deliver in the next 18 months. They've built numerous other 7-figure businesses with 6-figure net profits around their property ecosystem, and it's by no means been an easy ride. So on this podcast, they'll share their weekly trials and tribulations running multiple businesses, giving you never before seen insights into the inner workings of finding, funding, designing, delivering, and selling award-winning property deals, together with golden nuggets of advice through the 5 key areas of any business: marketing, sales, operations, finance, and talent. If you're a young entrepreneur looking to get started, or have a small team but you're looking to scale your business to the next level, this is the No Bullshit podcast for you.
We are live. Happy Friday, everyone. I hope you are watching this and not enjoying the lovely weather. If you haven't joined us before, Ben and I are serial entrepreneurs and we're running multiple businesses that are turning over 6, 7 and 8-figure turnovers, which we've been building for years. And hopefully these episodes, if you haven't joined us before, or if you have joined us before, provides nuggets in how we grow those businesses and manage the highs and lows, the problems and successes, and so on. We've got a fully jam-packed episode, as always, today. And we're going to kick off with whether we should auction one of our sites or not. Second, after that, we'll be talking about the Property People podcast run by Sam Lowney. Coming in probably slightly less exciting for some of us, but more exciting for planning people is a CLEUD application. We'll be sharing what CLEUD means. I don't think it is a word. It's many words pulled together in one. We'll be sharing on business development. Do you have a service-based business that you need to grow and how you are going about that, whether that's digital, old school marketing? We'll be sharing our tips on a success that we had this week. We'll be talking about CGIs, so that's computer generated images for developments and why you may need them as part of your schemes. We'll be talking about HMO exit finance rates and what people should be putting in their Excel sheets to predict a project that you're buying today, but obviously refinancing in maybe 6, 9 or 12 months time, or maybe even longer if it's a bigger scheme. We'll be talking about Class MA and Grampion conditions. And then Ben's written because I don't even know what that is. So that's what my brain just said when I read Grampion conditions. Kind of reminds me of like grand people that wear like Lonsdale Grampion.
Nothing to do with that.
Well, everyone have to wait and see. And then also we are going to be talking about The Ground Up, which is the other podcast that I run, slightly longer episodes, but we'll be sharing a little bit about that. And as always, Q&A session at the end. And it looks like questions are already coming in. Sorry, we are late. I should have said that at the very, very beginning. Ben had a very important appointment, so we had to start late. So we're joining you slightly later, and hopefully we will be able to come round to these questions. It looks quite a wordy one, so I won't ask it now.
Yeah, we'll come back to that one, Jimmy. Thanks very much. We'll answer that at the end. So stay tuned. Actually, I'll read it out just for those that are listening on the podcast. The planning officer was uncooperative on my first application, so I submitted 3 applications. He granted planning permission for 1, but declined to determine the other 2 under Section 70A and 70B. So we will go into that later. Have you encountered this before? What alternatives do I have, as no appeal is allowed? Cool. Good question. I better do some research in the background. So on to point number 1. To auction or not to auction. Jack and I have sold 2 things at auctions in the past, and it's been a bloody great process for us as the seller. I do not know how people make money buying at auction, because what we sold those sites for, we can make the scheme stack up if we were buying at that level. So for us, we felt like we were getting way above where we expected it to be on both those sales. And for anyone coming in, obviously they saw it as a bargain, as a deal, because they were buying it. But it's an interesting one. We haven't bought anything at auction. We've got a site which, if you tuned in last week, you'd have found out that we completed on an airspace development down in South London. A couple of you reached out after listening to last week's about potentially buying it from us, which is great. I guess warning here, if your answer is to auction, then you might be a bit late unless you move fast forward. if we decide not to auction, then obviously that's good for you. But for us, we want speed, we want certainty, and that's what auctions give. So, once what do they call the thing? The hammer? Navel?
Once the
Navel?
hammer drop.
Gavel? Gavel. Is that the word?
I don't know. I thought it was a
Let
hammer.
me know in the comments below. I don't know. I think it's a gavel. But anyway, the hammer. Once the hammer drops, you've got 28 days to complete on the sale of that. And
it is a gavel.
Is it gavel? Okay, got there. Good. Which is great. You get speed, you get certainty. What you don't get is potentially value. I've said at the start of this that Jack and I have sold 2 things and it's gone for way over asking. I don't think this was like 3 or 4 years ago. I just don't think that, I don't know if the market is there now for the type of asset that this is, airspace development. Are there people out there looking for this type of thing at auction at this level? No, I don't know. And that's the question that we're asking ourselves. So we'd love to know from everyone out there in terms of the comments down below. Are you selling stuff at auction? Are you buying stuff at auctions? What are you finding the auction market is like? We'd love to know, because we're stuck really deciding on whether we put Beckton Court, which is our 2-unit airspace development, into an auction in the coming weeks. We would love some certainty. We just don't know if it would, reach the levels that we want it to reach, or the levels that we would reach in a private sale outside of an auction. So, don't know. What do you think, Jack?
We love auctions in the sense that it's kind of like a free bite of the of the cherry. Is that a phrase?
Good with words today. Yeah, it is. Bite of the cherry. Yeah, free bite of the cherry.
Yeah. So if we, for an example, are going to develop this site out, and we have a value that we have to crystallize the site at because we're delivering it out and realizing the gross development value. The reason we love auctions is because you can put something in an auction for very little cost, normally a few £100 in marketing costs. And if it doesn't sell at the reserve that you want to set, it doesn't sell, and then you can still go out and develop the site out. So that's why we love an auction condition. Ben mentioned committed buyers and speed. You can unfortunately go to market and meet a lot of tire kickers that waste a lot of time in legals, and then you might be going back to market 3 months down the line after a load of finance costs and going around the ringer with that process. So it negates all of that. People exchange on the day, and you know where you're at. And even if you extend the completion deadlines maybe 6 weeks or 8 weeks, you might get a higher value because it gives people more time to get their ducks in a row. But the thing that Ben mentioned is you do tend to discount quite a few buyers. And those buyers are people that need leverage or have a slower process or want to get their head around things first, or think auctions are not the place to be buying. So, yeah, I mean, I'm still in 2 minds. I feel that the best value really is on open market. I think sometimes you get lucky in auction. There's certain lots that lend themselves better to the market and look more appealing. And the reason I say that is because I think we've mentioned before in our lives, Ben and I went to bid on a house a few years ago that was boarded up on the windows. And because the windows were boarded up, it kind of attracts the property investor, property developer, bit of property on the side type of people. And it actually ended up selling for more than what the gross development value is on that road. So that just goes to show that the cheapest place isn't to pick up deals in auction, but those people like to do a back to brick renovation, keep it as part of the portfolio and hold it. We obviously trade a lot of our stuff, so we need to make a profit. And if we made a loss and have to hold it, that's not really an ideal situation. But we're good to hear what the audience says about whether we should auction or not. One thing that I would like to add on how we work out whether we can auction it and where we set our reserve value at is we understand our return on capital that we can create in our business. And if we can exceed that by just selling it with the planning uplift, we will then set the reserve at that value. So it's kind of a win-win situation for us. We either make a good return in a short period, or we don't sell at auction and then we end up delivering it anyway. But that metric can be worked out on your sort of return on cash per year in the deal. And we focus that if we can hit about 60% of what the profit would be if we were to deliver the project, we will throw that into auction, let it go for that value, and then use the capital to fund future pipeline.
Nice. Good. Property People, number 2. Jack's been on Property People podcast with Sam, and I see my face there as well. So it looks like you're 1.2 thousand views within 8 days, very quickly catching me up at 1.5 after a month.
Yeah, I I said, what are the chances of me and you being on the like top? Because it says latest, and I suppose yours was latest launched, so that's why. But yeah, just to promote Sam Lowney, who we work with. He's a finance broker from Merry Oaks, but he also runs Property People podcasts. And some of the podcasts that he's recorded are really good. He's got a good one on there with John Howard. He's got another good one on there with a guy called Ben Richards. And there's many more to go and watch. But what I like about Sam is he's just real. He's in our industry, there's a lot of fluff, and you don't get any fluff with Sam. He's just a good, honest guy, and I really like how he carries himself and how he's interested in people's abilities, lives, skills, businesses, thought processes, progression. And I really enjoyed the interview. He actually caught me off guard in the interview, so when you go and watch it, you'll see. But he kind of asked me what's the best and worst advice that I've ever had. And by the way, he doesn't tell you what he's going to ask you before the interview. So
I got caught up by that one as well.
It is pretty raw. I almost got emotional because my best advice was actually from someone that was quite sentimentally passed. So I was like, I said it, and I was like, God, that was a bit like, deep. And I was like, how do I smooth over this? But yeah, no, it was a thoroughly enjoyed interview, and I also love that as an interview, as an interviewer, he knows so much about my businesses before that interview. So he really knows how to intricately ask the questions detailed around scaling which business, Central Suites, XP Surveys, XP Property, Aparo, our social business, and so on and so forth. So love it. Go check it out. And that's all we need to do on this. Just push you over there if you get a spare hour or
nice.
2 hours.
I'd also recommend listening to the Paul Higgs interview with Sam. Yeah. That's one of my favourites. Runs Millbank. Been a property developer for like 40 years, done some amazing stuff, had some lots of issues, been through lots of different cycles, has a wealth of knowledge and understanding to share. So yeah, do check out the one with Paul Higgs as well.
Comically, when I was dashing around social media earlier, I was on Facebook and it just came up with Paul Higgs has moved to Totnes. I sort of self, go on, Paul.
What's he doing there? Not a place to go.
Land,
yeah, probably. But yeah, where the developments go. Cool. So number 3, what is a CLEUD app? CLEUD stands for a Certificate of Lawfulness of Existing Use or Development. And if you've not come across one of these before, I guarantee throughout your developer life, you will need to submit one of these. I think we've spoken about it on some of our previous sites or in some of our previous podcasts. But why is it important? And it's been extremely important in one of the applications and projects that we are working on at the moment. And we submitted a planning application for Class MA, which for those new to this is a permitted development prior approval right to convert Class E business space into C3 residential use. And on this particular site, there was a bit of a grey area, blurred line between, one, what the use class of the site is, and 2, has it actually been in that use class for 10 years, which is what we're trying to prove. So basically, we submitted a Class MA application. It got rejected because the council argued that the existing use class was kind of null and void, or it didn't form part of Class E use that was then available for us to then convert. So we had to go back in and prove, without a doubt, that the existing use class is Class E and it has been in operation as Class E for over 10 years. And that may not sound like much, but we've spent the best part of, I think, 8 or 9 grand on legal counsel to give us their opinion on how justified our evidence is. And I've listed a few things on this. So our particular case was that we were trying to prove the site was light industrial. Now that means that it's a light industrial use in amongst a residential area. So there's all sorts of stipulations in terms of noise emissions. So a light industrial unit has to not cause any noise nuisance to the neighbouring area. And then the next stage was then to prove that it had been in that use for 10 years. So we had to go through a lot of proving things. And I wanted to give the listeners an insight into the types of things that we gathered together to prove that it had been in use for that that length of time, and it was that use class. And to be honest, when the legal counsel told us that we needed all of these things, I was a little bit shocked. Like I would have thought one or two of these things would suffice, but to make your case as robust as possible, and lessons learned going forward for us is that we are better off spending that money and time up front, getting all of the relevant information that we need to get our planning application through first time round. And if you look at kind of time being money, and you're trying to buy properties and you've bought properties and you need to get planning approval, it doesn't really matter what you spend on the approvals if you get it through first time. If you have to resubmit and go through the whole process again, you're probably looking at double or triple the cost to actually do all of it again. So you may as well spend the money up front, get the right things in place. So I wanted to tackle those two things. So is it light industrial? Is it Class C? We had to basically prove and find other cases where so it's a print factory, effectively, light industrial print factory. We had to prove and find other planning permission decision notices from other councils that showed that type of business and that type of use class falls within light industrial. We had to prove that there were no noise emission issues. So check that there hadn't been any local health and safety, like HSE objections from locals to say this print factory is kicking out X noise and it's disruptive and blah, blah, blah. Had that been the case and if it wasn't shut down, then obviously the council would have a case to say that this industrial unit isn't appropriate to a residential area because it's too noisy. So we had to prove that any local planning approvals that have gone through recently didn't have any causes for concern with regards to noise emissions. And then from operations, to show that it's been in operation for 10 years, we had to get business rate demands for all of those 10 years, business invoices that show that it's been in continuous use for 10 years by that occupant, building leases to show when the building was leased and throughout that period, business insurances over the 10 years. We had to get a statutory declaration from the accountant working for that company. We had to get a statutory declaration from the owner of that company to say that they've been in existence for over 10 years and continuous use over those 10 years. And that's a lot of information. That's a lot of back and forth. Really with this site, we had to make sure that the owner was on our side and would give us the time and the information and the knowledge. The way that we would plan that, or way that we did plan that, is effectively the site has a nil value or a nil planning use class until it can be proven otherwise. And that's going to mean it's going to be very difficult for them to sell. Work with us as a developer. We know what we're doing. We know what we need. If you give us all this information, we will be increasing the value of your property and be able to complete on it and move forward. So that's the argument that we were having with the seller. But a CLEUD app for again is certificate of lawfulness of existing use or development. So effectively what you're trying to do is prove something has been in existing use for X amount of time, establish the use class, in our case use class E, which then means we can now submit a class MA application to convert that to residential. So huge amounts of value uplift by going through that process. Hopefully that made sense.
It did.
Cool. On the road, business development.
Yeah. So this week on Tuesday, I spent basically the day with our new business development manager in XP Surveys, stomping the road, charging round to architectural firms that are local to where our office is, and doing what I would call the old school form of marketing. I was actually just Googling like top trends of marketing. And when you go onto those, it's PPC, SEO, social media marketing. And I believe that the old school ways of actually getting out there, getting in people's faces, understanding what they need, and then giving them a solution to that is sometimes a bit neglected. And Ben and I talk about it quite a lot. And obviously one of our heroes towards that is James Sinclair. He loves a bit of old school marketing. Back in the day, you would have to go and stomp the streets, put flyers out, get around and get the name and branding out. But anyway, we went out on Tuesday. We met with 4 architectural practices, followed up with all 4. And then today is Friday. We actually won a job on Thursday from one of the architects that we met, who we've never worked with before, and they didn't know of us. And it just goes to show that easy, simple process can be effective in the right capacity and booking, meetings with the right people. And, if you're getting dry on the sort of, I suppose, pipeline of projects that you have coming up, that one day out has generated £1,000 worth of revenue. that can snowball quite quickly in terms of efforts and returns for someone in your business to generate that business. So don't sort of neglect it. You can just go and, ask the question or knock on the door or pick up the phone. We feel that because of all the Zoom calls and rearranging, like you can still do the old school, just go in there, chat about it and see how you get on. And that is also why people would love to work with people. Like the presence and the face-to-face is super important.
Yeah, I touching on your sort of SEO, PPC, I do think people have the tendency to be, to a certain degree, lazy nowadays because there's so many good tools digitally that, people are on their phones all the time. So capturing people's attention that way is, one way of marketing. I think when you're certainly the service-based business that we've got, where we're attracting more of a B2B type client, we've tried the SEO, we've tried the PPC and the sort of digital outreach, and it's just not worked. We need to be building relationships. We need to be, like Jack says, in people's faces, kind of showing them why they need to use us above someone else, and building relationships face to face, person to person. It's just, in all businesses, there is definitely a segment of your marketing that needs to be face to face and not just this faceless digital presence on your phone or your laptop.
And also, if you're not in front of them, how can you understand what they need and want? As in, you've got a product and obviously that's adaptable, but if you can't understand their needs and what their business is about, I think that's a really key part of it.
Yeah, it probably is worth saying that, as well as doing these days out, actually physically going face to face, sometimes you just can't beat a bit of cold outreach or phone calls. Getting on the phone, it's a numbers game. We trawled through local directories, pulled together local architects that we know that we want to work with, and we just rang them and we emailed them. And you have to be a bit relentless. And I haven't really been in a sales role, and Jack's got way more experience in this, but I guess I've learned a lot from what he does with our property stuff. And it kind of makes sense. It's you might get 2 out of 100 people use you, but you need to make those 100 calls to actually get those 2 in. So it's about volume, it's about numbers. Pick up the phone, speak to people. And Jack and I brought in the BDM because we didn't have the time to do that. I think as sort of business owners and entrepreneurs, sometimes you have to recruit to do the things that you know you need doing that might have a 3-month delay in terms of that income coming back into the business. But eventually it will absolutely kind of exponentially, you'll get the exponential returns on investing in that person to purely focus on sales and business development. Cool. Why use CGIs? We've been using them on almost all of our projects, really, whether it's to sell or to help the planning officers, for example, kind of visualize some of the things that you're trying to present and show them, like this external CGI that you can see of Colney Hatch Lane, the greenery, the lushness of the development that you're trying to create. And top tip really is use as much greenery as you possibly can in these things, even if it doesn't look like it in the end. It's going to make the council, it's going to be more appealing to the council because of it. And actually, I've just noticed this CGI is the old CGI that I was hoping for that got rejected first time round, but it looks way better than what we ended up with. But there you go, that's by the by. So why use CGIs? For planning officers to sell a lot faster. If you're looking on YouTube and you're looking at the CGI on screen, like I look at some of these CGIs, I just don't know whether they're photos or renders nowadays. They're so good. But one thing I wanted to touch on today is, more often than not, with interior CGI specifically, you get what you pay for. These 2 CGIs on screen, I mean, Jack, I haven't asked you this, but these are the same room. Which CGI for you looks better?
Sorry, the one on the left, way better.
Exactly. The reason I'm showing these side by side is that more often than not, you do get what you pay for. The one on the left, I think, cost us somewhere around £700-800 just for that one render. The one on the right was more like £300-400. I did instruct a company, i.e. the company on the right-hand side, to start pulling these internal CGIs together. And it got to a point where they clearly don't have the skill set to deliver the quality of CGI that I think we need, certainly for this development. And that's, I don't want to kind of downplay the guys on the right, because up to now they've done all of our CGIs and they've coped with kind of the level of quality of CGI that we need. On this particular project, that doesn't cut the mustard anymore. It's a different price point. It's a different target market. So I instructed a different company who I knew had capabilities to just give it that extra level of detail, that extra piece of care, that extra due diligence and luxury type finish that I think we needed. So you can pay a lot less for CGIs and you could do it twice, or you could just pay a little bit more to get it right first time. I think going forward, I'll probably make that call a little bit earlier on and maybe not try to penny pinch and be like, they could probably get us to where we need to be. It's fine. 400 quid. That's they've done it before. But in reality, it just wasn't enough.
So yeah, the 400 quid, is that per CGI image?
Correct. Yeah. And that is like, I would say low to mid range. If you want what we get on the left hand side, and it depends really on how you're providing them the information. If you're giving them a fully built model, for example, in Revit, that's something that they maybe don't have to do in their process. If you've already done that work, they don't have to do it again. All they're really doing is rendering it and adding the materials and whatnot. But if they're building it from scratch, then there's a lot different a cost kind of basis there. But yeah, it's not cheap. I think you probably could find some cheaper ones, but you get what you pay for, and the ones on the right are the cheap ones. The ones on the left are the more expensive ones. So we use these in our sales brochures. The other one thing that I wanted to talk about with CGIs is having them done early really does help you figure out all of the interior design stuff as well. Like we've actually changed some of our interiors based on what we've got back from these CGIs. And if you don't do that early enough, I'm actually not very good with interiors. Like my skill set is like engineering, problem solving, space planning, all of the detailed design. When it comes to interiors, I have to see something in place. Like I'm telling Gabby, my interior designer for Aura, all the time, like, you've shown me loads of materials on a mood board. They look good together. I don't know if that's right for me until I see it in situ. And that's where these CGIs come to life, maybe changing some of the flooring colors or the knob colors or the lighting, and seeing it all pieced together in one place helped me make better decisions really with the interior design choices. So I love them. I think they are well worth spending the money on because they do help to sell flats faster. And if you're trying to sell off plan, you need to get these out in the world as soon as possible to give people the vision of what you're trying to build. So make sure you don't skip this part. Cool. If you want to talk about things like CGIs and CLEUD apps and Grampion conditions and all the stuff we talk about on these podcasts, then do join us and 10 other people in our boardroom group. We're constantly looking for new people to join and help give a bit of variety in the room. It's for people that want to grow their property businesses to 7 or 8 figures. Maybe you've done a couple of HMOs or a few flips and you want to actually start the development route and start doing some multi-unit schemes or some commercial conversions. We'd love to have you on board. We look at deal clinics, business issues, goals and achievements for last month and what we're trying to achieve next month, and hold you accountable to a certain degree for trying to achieve those things. And it's just a great platform for 4 hours every month to sit around a table with like-minded people in order to try and grow your business. So if you're interested, type boardroom below or DM us and we'll get in touch. If you're excited by some of the property developments or investments that we talk about on this show and want to know more about investing £100,000 or more with XP, email info@xpproperty.co.uk to set up a call with one of our team. We can discuss our open investment opportunities and provide you with our track record details showing with complete transparency our historic performance project by project and how you could be part of our growing pipeline of developments.
I was thinking after I put this might be a bit premature with the election next week because we might see a swing maybe. But anyway, we're bidding on stuff at all times, whether that's developments, flips, HMOs. And I wanted to share basically what we just firmed up is in terms of what sort of debt facility finance cost we are putting in our exit finance. The HMO, I call it refurbishment loan products, are about 12% in it once you take the ins and outs fees, not like the ins and outs as a phrase, into consideration. But the big $1 million question is always, when you come to market to refinance this asset, what is the mortgage rate going to be? Because a HMO, it can kill or make a deal break, which is something to be really sort of dialed down on. But anyway, I actually mentioned this to Sam Lowney, and he sort of firmed up that I was in the right sort of ballpark. So we run our numbers currently at 5.5% for a 5-year fixed product, which is roughly where we're looking. Some people might want to do a 2-year product, and you might be able to get a slightly better rate for that, and around a 2 or a 3% product fee. What we also do is we then stress that value up to 6 and 6.5%. Believe it or not, when the market volatility changed quite significantly, we were stressing up to like 8, 9, even 10% in some instances to make sure the deal still works, it still cash flows, and you're not in a negative cash flow position. Because the whole point of building a buy-to-let or a single-let or a HMO is for cash flow. And the last thing you want is to finish that asset, the market to be in a different place, refinance on new products, and whoopsie, you're in negative position monthly on monthly cash flow. So hope that makes sense to everyone. And while we've got the refinance model of our HMO stack on the right-hand side, just to give you a few tips that we also look at, important metrics, we look to leverage up 70 to 75% loan to value. As mentioned, we include the product fee. We actually target an in excess of 20% return on the cash left in the deal on refinance. And we also monitor the return on equity, which is the value that you've created. That's almost, if you sold the property, what would be in your back pocket as a profit, as it were, if you got that GDV value for it as a sale.
Good stuff. Cool. Grampion conditions, and where don't they apply? If you tuned into some of our previous lives, you'd have seen we've done some schemes recently whereby we've got planning approval for a change of use, i.e. we've used Class MA to change Tame, for example, from an office unit into 20 flats. And that's all been done by Class MA prior approval. What we've also then gone and done is get approval for external work. So the image that you see on the screen, the balconies, the inset terraces, the Velux windows, the gardens, all of that stuff has been done as if it was still an office, but it's external works to get more light in, add private amenity space, and enhance the approval that we got at the Class MA stage. Now, sometimes we've had to do it the other way around, where we've gone as an office, get planning approval for those external works to get Velux windows in, to let light into areas of the building that were previously dark and not available for habitable space. So we've got an external works planning application approved, and then we've gone back in for Class MA to change the internal layout to suit the external windows and doors that we've now got approval for. Now, under a Class MA application, there's actually no mechanism to apply for windows and roof lights as part of that Class MA application. But what happens when you separate the two applications is that the council can put what's called a Grampion condition on your Class MA application to state that you can only do that Class MA works if you've already done or in conjunction with doing that external works, and they will specify the planning condition, the planning application reference number that has those external works. So you've got the Class MA change of use internally, but they link effectively with a Grampion condition to your external works planning application so that they're effectively kind of linked and joined, because you can't get the Class MA without having those extra windows and doors to make the spaces habitable internally. And that's a really, really useful tip and planning hack that we've been using a lot over the last 3 or 4 years to enhance our schemes, get more saleable floor space, get better lighting, get better amenity, get better saleability. What we've come across on our recent doctor's surgery project, which has come as a bit of a surprise. So we've actually got the external works approved for what we wanted to do. We've secured a previous Class MA application to change the use internally. But what we wanted to do is sort of combine those two. So we got the approval with the Class MA doctor surgery was for 4 units. We actually wanted to increase that into 5 and rearrange the internal layout so it better suited what we want to do. What we found out through that process is that we can't use this Grampion condition type planning hack, because the internal change of use the external works aren't necessary to deliver that Class MA change of use. So the crux of it is you can only use the Grampion condition sort of linking whereby the external works are there to let light and facilitate the internal change of use that you're trying to get. And we, it wasn't something that our planning consultant sort of notified us of until he started looking into it a lot more after getting the external works planning approval. So now what we're doing is actually going in for a full planning application rather than trying to be a little bit more sneaky using these little planning hacks. It does open a can of worms in terms of some of the other policies you weren't needing to abide by with the Class MA, like the need for private amenity space and various other bits and bobs that will be in the full sort of planning policy as a full application. But what we have got is fallback positions that absolutely no one can contest. We've got the Class MA use previously. We've got the external works approved. The fallback position is there. I think we're now just hoping that the planning officer will see that we could build out some of these things in tandem. There's no need to cause issues with the full planning application because we've got those fallbacks in place. What it does for us is solidify all of the works we want to do under one planning application. And the added benefit is that we want to turn the property into HMOs. And under Class MA, you can't actually turn properties into HMOs. So we would have had to have an extra step there anyway to go from C3 use class to C4 use class. But with a full planning application, once we've secured the C3 change of use to 5 flats, we can then, under C3 to C4 permitted development rights, convert into a HMO. That's if, I guess, they don't slap some sort of planning condition that they must remain as C3 use class, but they shouldn't really do that. But you never know with planners. Hopefully that kind of made sense. Let me know in the comments if you need anything else explained. But Grampion conditions are great. Use Class MA and full external works planning applications to kind of combine the two and link them to really enhance your schemes. But just be careful because you can't always use it when the changes you're making externally aren't facilitating the change of use that you're trying to achieve internally.
Makes perfect sense.
Hopefully, yeah, good. Approved. Cool. Ground up sound. Real estate deals.
Podcast promoting 2 podcasts. Podcast, please. Yeah, so Ground Up is a podcast that I set up with Stuart Wyeth, Ryan Beaumont, and also Dorian Payne, just to talk everything business and property construction, current affairs, whatever it may be in the world. And we've just finished recording our last episode of the series. We thought we'd give 12 episodes a go and see what the feedback was like. So if you haven't watched any, you will need to set some time aside because they are quite long. But I hope you get value from even though it is long, we also try to be quite light-hearted as well. Then, for example, the most recent episodes, we've talked about the different entities that we run, whether they're service-based, development businesses, the problems that come with those businesses. Across the board, I think we're delivering £500 million worth of pipeline. So you could definitely recommend you need to listen to the other 3 guys. They're all very unique in their own ways, but we all take the mick out of each other for various different things as well. But the episode 9 is currently on YouTube, and there's 3 more to drop every week for the next 3 weeks. So we got a bit of a break for recording. It's been pretty. We've been starting at 6:30 recordings every Thursday and Friday, so it's been pretty intense. Chatting away for a couple of hours, like before the day, and then we crack on with it. But it's good fun. It's good fun. And the last couple of episodes, there's some actually episode 12, spoiler alert, there is some really good value on finding your professional team, how to pre-qualify contractors, how to pre-qualify architects. So it'll be good for Ben to listen to that one. And building a professional team around a development business is what we discuss. And also an in-house team as well is what we discuss.
I've listened to all of them. They're great. It's great to hear some insights from different people doing slightly different things. There's always really interesting conversations about AI and some wider kind of philosophical things, which are quite interesting. I'm not sure whether I said this when we talked about it before, but the tune that I sang previously that you'll hear at the beginning of all the Ground Up podcasts, when Jack told me that whole intro music was generated via AI, I was absolutely blown away. Ryan's really big into his AI, and he basically told an AI to create a 1980s jingle for a ground up podcast about property development and blah, blah, blah. Gave it all this criteria. And almost straight away, it spat out a really, really catchy jingle that I was genuinely trying to find on Spotify, thinking, why can't I find this tune? It's a banger. I was singing it all the time at my house. And then Jack said, yes, because it's made up, which is just remarkable. So yeah, head over and check that out.
So all I would ask is go and try one episode. It could be any episode because they're all different. Maybe one title that you can more relate to. But please comment if you enjoy it and what we should probably talk about more and how we should adapt it. I mean, similar to this podcast, really. Welcome to Q&A and questions and advice on what you enjoy hearing about. But yeah, we'd appreciate you to go over there and give it a listen to see what you think, because it might flop or carry on. Who knows? Annoyingly, Dorian said that apparently, to be in the top 1% of podcasts, you have to do over 21 episodes. So I think we've got a graft for another 12, which I'd be excited to sleep more on Thursday and Friday. But these absolute boys keep getting me up. And yeah, anyway, I've got little to worry about because I haven't got kids, whereas two of them struggle a bit.
Yeah, it's well worth a listen, to be fair. And if you enjoy kind of tuning into Jack and I on this, please do rate us on Spotify, leave a review on Apple. We've got a lot of exciting things coming in the next sort of month or two. We've got a video editor piecing a few things together and chopping. I know that some people can't join throughout the whole session on YouTube Live, for example, or want they listen fully on podcasts, but they can't obviously see what's on screen and what we're talking about sometimes. So we're going to be piecing things together individually from some of the topics and segments that we talk about, packaging those up as 3 to 5 minute long videos and actually launching them as standalone videos. So when we go deep dive on a topic, we're going to be pulling some of those out and putting them on our YouTube channel. So, we're excited to bring that. And out of that comes more shorts and more reels and things like that. So you'll see us even more across the social media platforms than you already do. But if you do tune into this regularly, please share it with at least one person, rate us on Spotify, review us on Apple, because it all helps. And going back to Jimmy's question from the start, and this is what we're all about. And Jack, I've just realised that there was a question that came in that we were going to talk about from last week, I think. So I'll bring that one up in a minute. But I don't think this one will take too long. So Jimmy said, the planning officer was uncooperative on my first application, so I submitted 3 applications. He granted planning permission for one, but declined to determine the other 2 under Section 70A and 70B. Have you encountered this before? What alternatives do I have, as no appeal is allowed? Now, I'll be honest with you, Jimmy, I had to do a bit of research in the background whilst Jack was talking today to understand what the Section 70A and 70B is, because I haven't actually come across it. And what I've understood is that when you submit various applications that are very similar, then a planning officer can actually refuse to make a decision on some of the other ones, and you can't appeal it, apparently. So not something I've come across. One thing that I would say, kind of reading between the lines, if I'm completely honest, I don't know what the project is that you're talking about. It would be good to understand a bit more about the intricacies and what the changes were between the different applications. But the first line in your sentence, the planning officer was uncooperative, makes me think that obviously it's been a bit of a hard battle. But I'm also thinking that maybe what you're asking for isn't planning policy compliant, or them being uncooperative isn't always the case. Sometimes it is just not policy compliant. It's not going to get approved. It's not something that they can vouch for, or they can they agree with effectively. So sounds like you've had a bit of a hard time. I can't give you any more advice, to be honest. If there's no appeal allowed, it may be that you just have to accept it, that it's not going to get approved.
Surely I would have thought that is because if you had, for example, more money than care about, more money to just throw
at just keep going.
You could just fire in 10 applications, and then they're super overwhelmed with reviewing 10 different applications that are all slightly different. And it's kind of like the overwhelm. So it ensures that you are a little bit more focused around one. I mean, obviously, if you've done 3 applications on a pre-app, you would probably get a little bit more feedback.
Yeah, I really haven't come across that. I'll be completely honest. That's a good question that has stumped me. Maybe I can speak to a planning consultant of ours to understand a little bit more about that. I think in reality, based on the output and the decision that's come through and your process that you've gone through, I think if maybe you sent me the information of what you're trying to get approved, I may well turn around and say there's there's that won't fly because of X, Y, and Z. And the planning officer probably has valid reasons for that. And sometimes that happens. We don't get every single planning approval through first time round or second time round or third time round. Sometimes you've got to just give up and say, fine, this isn't going to go anywhere. What's the alternative? Can I do something slightly differently, or can I just build out what I have got planning approval for and just accept that that's the case and not waste any more time and money going through the planning process? But without having more detail on it, it's really difficult to say. But thank you very much for the question, Jack. I was going to bring up the one. I mean, do you have time for one more? It's quite a long question, and it was, thanks for sharing your wealth of knowledge. Jack has recently spoken about the increased cost of lending associated with working with family offices and the resultant increased GDV you would need to pursue to make this viable. For those that didn't tune in to when Jack was talking about this, I think we're talking about the fact that we would need to kind of almost quadruple the revenue in our business to cater for the reduction in profit share that funds and like larger equity providers would take from the slice. So he's asked, how do you gear up to deliver at this scale in terms of capacity? Does your current development strategy map onto the larger GDV stroke scale projects, adding and creating value in existing buildings, or with this change? And then finally, do family offices release funds on a project by project basis once an investment amount is agreed, or is it deployment of capital entrusted to us as XP Property? A few things to unpick there. How do you gear up to deliver at this scale in terms of capacity, I guess would be the first question.
So the desire and need for us to go to someone like a bigger fund is so that they always have the cash and we could just knock on their door and go, we need more, we need more, we need more, we need more. Whereas currently we've got doors that when we say that, they run out and then we have to try another door. So the whole proviso was to try and find a capital sort of fund where we didn't have to keep going through the same process over and over again to raise multiple monies for multiple deals. It just makes sense. It's trying to think of an analogy. But if you have a source that doesn't run out like a bank, it just makes your life a lot easier. So to leverage them up, whatever we're discussing, whether it's family offices or whether it's these funds, they will always do it on a deal by deal basis. They wouldn't fund your trading entity. They will always have to fund a deal. And the principle is whether the deal is a 1 million gross development value exit, 10 million gross development value exit, or 100 million gross development value exit, they all would fund that particular deal. And the funds are always the junior debt or the what I would call the equity piece. And the banks are always the debt piece or the first charge piece on any three of those eventualities. They'll probably look quite similar. So they'll probably be 70 to 75% loan to cost or bank money. And then the rest would be the equity coming in. Obviously, there's more complicated things like mezzanine finance, which sits between the bank and the equity. But to keep things super simple, that is how it's leveraged up. So it's always done on the deal. Us developers have to focus on making sure the trading entity always has enough cash going into it from the SPVs and the projects to keep alive and find the new projects to keep delivering. The principle that we talked about a smaller slice of a bigger pie is the sort of promote structures that funds would want to see is between 10 and 20% of profit go to the developer, depending on their performance, on their return on cash they achieve. So, for example, if we did, our sites on average are around £5 million in value. That's our sort of average size. And if we planned to make 20% return on that for us and the investor, that's £500,000 each. But if it was a fund, they would expect that the £1 million profit would be split 80-20, which means we would only get 200,000. So for us to deliver those £5 million schemes, if we times that size of deal by 10, we would be making more profit. So it's basically working hard or working smart is modeling that out. Obviously, outsourcing the sort of finding the equity piece for a lower stake can be completely avoided if you just improve your internal systems of finding capital. So originally we were trying to outsource that and get similar rates. We realized the similar rates don't exist. So we've just got to work hard on building our process out a lot better and stick to what we've done, but improve it tenfold so that it makes the finding easier, but the returns the same. But then it's exponential with the growth of the gross development value. Whereas if you go down the promote structure route, you are compromised and limited to the return.
Nice. I wanted to touch on the first point. So how do you gear up to deliver at this scale in terms of capacity? And I mean, it's obviously all about the team. And just to put things into perspective, kind of where we're at the moment, pipeline anywhere between 40 and 50 million pounds. It's Jack and Aaron really on the acquisitions. We had a good chat at Lords the other week with the land director of Troy Homes. They do £75 million a year, or their pipeline is £75 million, so they're a step ahead of us. But they only have 2 people in their land team, don't they, Jack? It was the land director and one other guy that was there with them. So that's enough people to deliver that £100 million worth of pipeline at that front end. When I was chatting to them about their technical and their delivery team, they said that they will have a technical project manager for every 2 projects that they're delivering and building out, which was useful information. Myself and Tom from XP, we've got 5 projects on the go at the moment, and it's been a real struggle with kind of me feeding into that and having, Tom's been overloaded trying to deliver that. So we've bringing in Stuart to kind of help take off some of those, to take away like a couple of those projects. And I do think, having even worked on some of the Berkeley Group schemes I worked on, sort of two projects per one like technical project manager, I think is a really good place to be when you're at this scale, which is like 5 to 40 units. When you start getting slightly bigger than that, then you might have to have tiers of people under that. So a technical coordinator, then a senior project manager, and they work in tandem. 2 of them on one project, for example. But I think you need to look at the size of project that you're working on. There will be an element of the bigger the project, the more people you need. But that's also going to come down to the procurement route that you're working on. Is it a main contractor route? Are you contract manager? And a key thing that we learned over the last couple of years, to facilitate having those team members, you need to have some cash flow into the business from other things. So actually taking things like acquisition fees on completion of the project, the legal completion of purchase, you might take a 2% acquisition fee that helps to streamline the cash within the development business. And then you also take a development management fee. And if you're working with investors that can't accept there being a development management fee, then they're probably not the right investors for you. You have to keep the lights on. You have a team that you're building, like us within XP, that needs to be cash flowed from the SPV. If it's us delivering that scheme, the profit is profit. That's at the tail end. We need to be paid to actually deliver the scheme throughout the project. And I think the smaller you go, the more argument there is for the investor to maybe push back on that if you don't have a team and it is just you. But literally, when you've got 7 mouths to feed like we do, we have overheads. To bring those opportunities to the fray, to deliver them how we should, then if we are the one actively project managing, providing the quantity surveying, we need to be paid for that to keep the lights on as things progress. And then the profit is our profit at the end, and everyone's incentivized to get to the end. We're not making money out of that cash flow. It's greasing the wheels to deliver the project. So delivering up at scale is going to be all about your team and how you build that team to satisfy how many people you need on those schemes to deliver them, really. Does your current development strategy map into the larger GDP scale projects? Yes and no. We've been looking at bigger offices for conversions. We've been looking at bigger offices with massive car parks around the side to build upon, as well as a second phase. So I think with our team at the moment, we could easily scale up to projects that are 10 to 20 million pound GDV as opposed to 5 to 10 million pound GDV. It's a very similar amount of work if you've got the right team in place. And I don't think our strategy is necessarily changing a huge amount, other than we are looking to trade things on a lot more. And Jack and Aaron are actively out there trying to find sites that we can do a bit more faster, flipping land developments that maybe take a little bit longer, because we're in this big delivery phase for us where we're delivering 65 units across our 5 sites. That's going to take us through to sort of summer next year. So we're now looking ahead at summer next year, thinking what else can we bring into the business to either trade on in between, get some cash flow again into the business, or longer term land developments that might take a bit more time up front. So from a strategy perspective, that's sort of what we're looking at over the next 2 or 3 years. And we were talking yesterday about getting a master program together, or looking at our master program in depth, because we haven't looked at it long enough over the last couple of months. to actually figure out what is going to drop when in terms of finishing, delivery, sales on our current sites, and when do we need to be bringing in that pipeline again in 2025 and 2026.
I will also add, when we're throwing all these big numbers around of what we're delivering today and delivering, a 10 to 20 million pound development, it's a common myth that revenue changes are a bit of a pie in the sky or unbelievable. But in what you've got to remember in property is, if you're doing a 5 million GDV scheme and then you take on another one, it's not double the amount of work if you were a trading entity. If you took a 5 million pound turnover trading business to a 10 million turnover, the change between that business is so significant, it's almost unparalleled or uncompared. Whereas if you take a 5 mil development and do another one, it's similar work on two different projects, and it takes twice as much time, but it doesn't take all of the nuances of whatever you may go through in a trading entity to change that revenue. I just thought that would be a point to make, because that's where property development or property investment is so different from any other trading business.
Nice. I think that's pretty much hopefully answered a lot of your questions. And it's saying user DD40 blah 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 blah, but actually it was someone that does tune in. Who was it?
I don't know. I prefer user DD. First name user, surname DD.
Yeah, I can't remember where the question came through.
Thank you for the question anyway.
Whoever it was. Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I'll find out and let people know. But cool. Anything else that you wanted to talk about?
All done from me. Everyone can get out and enjoy the last bit of the sun.
Yeah, and I will find out. It's going to bug me who it was. But anyway, end of. Have a good weekend, everyone. I'll speak to you soon. These live Q&A episodes are all about helping you grow your business and build a property portfolio that provides financial wealth. If you have specific topics that you'd like us to discuss, make sure to comment on the platform you're listening on, or email info@xpproperty.co.uk so that we can discuss your topic in future episodes. And if you found these conversations valuable for growing your business, make sure to click that follow button, and we'd really love for you to tell just one person about us. Thank you.